Now with our final step in the stage of this production, we've gone through pretty much everything here in producing this track. Our final stage, as always, is going to be mastering. Now with that being said, I do master sometimes in mix, meaning not doing the stem mixing that we did today. Sometimes I'll do my mastering inside the actual session with all our MIDI and everything we did prior to this. You can do it that way. There's really no right or wrong in my opinion. I've had tracks where I do it like this, and I've also had tracks the other way doing them in mix. So try to just find what works for you. Sometimes seeing it in stem mixing like this is a lot more kind of in-depth and detail where you can kind of pluck away at little details and then do the mastering. With that being said, let's just start throwing on the stuff we need on our master channel. Now, not all the time will I have a lot going on in my master channel. Sometimes I'll have a really subtle amount of plugins. Sometimes I'll have a good amount. It depends on how well the mix down is. So I'm always going to be about a few bars outside of my drop, and I'm always going to work from there. First thing I throw on right away is Pultec from UAD. I start warming up the sound a little bit. And we'll open that up now. As you guys can see, I've used this a lot throughout the entire session. I'm actually not even going to use the Legacy. I'm going to use another one here. I've used it a lot throughout this entire session, that it warms up the sound for a lot of your stems. You know, if you guys have the Waves version, stick with that. You know, use it as much as you can. So right away, let's just listen to that. You should notice a significant difference in the mids and lows, which is what we boosted here. So we'll start with that right away. I'm going to move on to a multi-band compressor now. I'm going to use FabFilter. And majority of the time in my tracks, I get a lot of mid-range. Let's take a look. Which it looks like we're getting, usually from 200 up, sometimes all the way over to a little more over here than 2 to 3K. It depends on the song. Sometimes I'll find a lot of mid-range that I just got to get out of there, and it creates a tiny bit of a fatter sound. Listen to how much cleaner and better those chords with the leads are sitting in the mix. Subtle detail there with the master chain, but makes a difference. Next, I'm going to put on a twin tube that's going to give a little saturation to the mix. Now let's see without all of those. All right, so we're getting there, we're plucking away at it. Next up, I then want to place it through a couple of compressors. First, I usually put either an API or I like to put a Vertigo, which is by Brainworks. So we can go down to Plugin Alliance, and you can see down here, this is a great compressor to use. Now, when I use this compression, it's very, very subtle amount of compression because I'm gonna go into an API as my next compressor, so be careful with this. Notice on the metering, I'm doing about a dB there. Not much. Again, let's AB. So we're starting to get a fuller sound. Let's keep moving along. Let's go to the API as I mentioned, and we'll go down to Waves, API 2500. This is a compressor that I deeply believe in, that I've been using for years. I've said it many times, I wish I could afford the hardware. It's beautiful effects plugin, mastering plugin, bus compressor, you name it. Really, really key to having on all of your tracks if you use it correctly. So let's keep pushing this now and start gaining a little bit more output. So it's going to get a little bit louder here. Mastering, I usually do a shorter attack. The release, I'm going to just shut this down here. The release, sometimes you want longer because you don't want the signal bouncing around. You want it more of a kind of straight balance signal. So be careful with your release. I'm going to go pretty extreme with the compressor on the ratio. And you can hear the mix kind of coming in and out. I'm going to switch the tone around, and I'm going to go down here to old, and I'm going to use a medium knee. All right, let's A-B that. So don't overdo it with that vertigo and that API that we just put on. Your track may not need that. If you have the right amount of compression in your stems and your in-mix itself, you might not need to do that stage that I just went through. So for this song, I feel like it was necessary to compress a little further to get that glued sound. Let's now start limiting and push just a little further. When limiting, I'm not trying to push too far in the red. You can get away with it. There's many songs I've heard that way, but be very careful with going too far in the red there. Now let's push one step further with our limiting. I'm going to switch this over to 16 and clip is on. So now I can push my input gain a little further, and this is very important, the sequence I'm going and how these are listed. I apologize, I keep stopping and going because I want you guys to hear the A and B. I don't want to just keep, going with parameters and not showing you guys why the sound's changing. It's very important when you're pushing the input gain to listen closely to your kick drum. At this stage, you may need to dial the volume of your kick drum up and down a little bit, depending on if you hear it distorting, the louder you're going. So with that being said, I'm going to open up a metering and see how close we are to about -6, -7 RMS, which you guys will see right up here. So with that being said, I don't need to go much louder. I'm actually going to back off a touch. -6 is usually where I want to be on my drops. I don't need to go much further than that as far as loudness. Lastly, on the bottom of the chain, I always put a stereo imager to kind of tighten up any mono sections that I may have missed. I'll open up Isotope's imager, and I'm just going to put about 200 hertz or lower in a full mono setting with this. So everything under here that we'll hear now is going to be in mono. Now that's going to tighten up your mix a little bit. So again, let's check our metering. So that's sounding really good. Lastly, at the top, I usually like putting a 20 hertz cut, 22, really sharp cut here. You will not hear this right now, but when you're playing in a venue with a huge system and subwoofers, those can really be felt, these low frequencies. So I cut them so it makes sure everything translates perfectly in those venue speakers. So you can see sometimes I'll go back into my mix as I'm mastering to make sure everything's feeling good. Lastly, I just like to do a quick automation for my breakdown. I like to make the volume a little bit lower in the breakdown than the drop so there's more impact. Sometimes I'll automate it, depends if it needs it. Again, sometimes you'll have vocals in here that need that volume, so sometimes you can't really do this, but I like automating out the buildup a little bit for a dB or so, just so it has more impact. right, so let's A/B that. All right, guys, there you have it. That's a complete course on producing this style progressive house track that I have here today. You know, we went through a lot here, all the way from starting the concept to the mixing, mastering, from getting the MIDI down to sound designing, which is, it's all important. It all plays a huge role in getting to your final product. So with that being said, always take your time in your productions, guys. Don't rush. You know, if you're not feeling inspired, take a step back and really refresh yourself and come back in and just get that track together and get it done. So hopefully this helped you guys out. As always, please let us know if you have any questions, and we'll catch you guys next time. Take care.